So I'm hoping that by sharing my story with you, I might be able to help someone else. For years, I had some health problems. And, when I was a teenager, through my 20s, even in my 30s, I would get bronchitis for like every 2 or 3 years. And nobody knew why. And then as I got older, it was maybe every 2 years. Then maybe every year, once a year. And in the last year, I've actually had pneumonia and bronchitis twice. And I couldn't get the wheezing out. It kept going on. And I went to a new doctor this year. She said, "Do you have asthma?" And I said, "Why does everybody keep asking me that?" Because no, I've never had asthma. And she sent me to a pulmonologist. And after doing some breathing tests before I saw the doctor, and then spending about an hour with him, and he asked me hundreds of questions that we talked about, I found out I have asthma. Now, I always thought of asthma as those people who all of a sudden you can't catch your breath, you can't breathe, you can't do those things like running or just walking, it's hard. Or I saw people who every day had to use an inhaler. I don't have any of that. I've never had any of that. And what he told me was mind-blowing, because he told me that my asthma is triggered by toxins. And many of them are household toxins, but they could also be things like, yesterday I went and got my hair colored. Those are toxic chemicals. And when I'm around them, that triggers them. So I have a mild form of asthma. And we talked about the fact that for 50 years growing up, I had toxic chemicals all around me. I had bleach and Clorox and Tide and scrubbing bubbles and Dawn dishwashing detergent and Cascade and Finish and shampoos and conditioners and mouthwash and toothpaste and air fragrances, and I could go on. And that was rough. But I wasn't that person who couldn't breathe, who always had to use the albuterol or had other things that they had to use. That wasn't me. But all of that time with all of those chemicals, that's what caused this. So now when I'm around some of them, I get that feeling. Mine shows up as eventually a bronchitis. He shared with me that there are many people like me. He says, I see thousands of people in our practice a year, many of them who are my age, and they have asthma. I shared with him that 11 years ago, I took all the toxins out of my house. Everything we use in our house is toxin-free, is non-toxic, is guaranteed non-toxic. It's not seventh generation or Myers or any of those things that, may or may not be. These are real non-toxic products. And he actually told me that that was good, because had I not done that, given the fact that my asthma is triggered by those types of products, he said, right now, you would probably be one of those people who was using an inhaler every single day, or you'd be one of those people who's carrying an oxygen bag because they need oxygen to stay alive. COPD and bronchitis, they're really forms of an asthma. We went back and we looked at, when were the times that I had really bad bronchitis? When did the wheezing get worse? And we looked at that over like the last 5 years. You know what? In that year to 18 months that I was at home, like most of you, right, with the pandemic, and about the only place I ever went was the grocery store, 0 issues of anything, 0. Well, of course not, because my house is all non-toxic, and I didn't spend any time anyplace else. When I looked at the other times, like I spent 5 days in Mexico last year, was home for a night, was on a plane, went to Chicago for 2 days, came back. Yep, right after that, bad hit of bronchitis and on medicine. So, there were absolute triggers. So there's things that I can't control. I am not going to stay in my house forever. I'm going to be out places. I can't really control what I'm exposed to at those places, but I can sure control the things that I can control. So who do you know that's just like me? You may be in your 60s and 70s, and You may have that tickle, that cough, that thing that doesn't go away sometimes. You may have some asthma that is growing that you don't even know. But it's not terrible. Life's not going to end. But I'm also now more susceptible, I know, to things that happen. So, as an example, we know that there's a lot of people with the pandemic who had respiratory issues or asthma or many other things, and they're no longer with us. So I'm at risk. And the big reason I'm at risk is because for 50 years, I had all kinds of chemicals around me. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a beautician, I'm not a painter, I'm not anybody who works with chemicals all the time. I'm none of that stuff. But still ended up with this. And it may get worse. So right now, I'm going to be on like a Symbicort every day, maybe even for the rest of my life. And I'll have an inhaler because sometimes I do get to that point where it's really difficult, or it's wheezing, right? Or I'm sleeping, trying to sleep, and I'm just wheezing all night. That's not going to go away. Do you have kids or grandkids? Are they being exposed to all the things that I spent 50 years being exposed to before I changed my home up 11 years ago? Do you want them to have the problems you have or the problems that I have? What if you're in your 20s or 30s? What if you have young kids? What if you have babies? What if you have pets? Do you want to expose them to everything that I have, that you might have? Everything I've been going through for years and everything I'm going through now was absolutely preventable. But my parents did the best they could. You know what? When I was out on my own and I was taking care of myself, I thought I was doing the right thing. I wasn't, but I thought I was. And so what about you? What about what you can do? I hope that this resonates with somebody, that you start to take the toxins out of your home, that you figure out what's not good for you, and that you make the change of it. If I could go back and have changed things before 11 years from now, I absolutely would have. I am so grateful that now I found out that this is not just bronchitis that's happening, this is really asthma, and that there's a reason my asthma is being triggered. If I would have looked ahead and I knew that this was going on, I would have changed things way earlier, but I didn't. You have the chance to change things now. And remember, it's not just cleaning products. It's shampoos and conditioners and lotions and toothpaste and all kinds of things that can be causing this. Learn from my experience, make a change.